So, picture this. It's 1995, and a graphic design teacher named Linda Weinman just needs a really simple digital sandbox. She just wanted a place to play around with these cool new digital tools like Photoshop and host her students' work so everyone could check it out. So she buys the domain name lynda.com. Well, as her site started getting traction, she made this huge leap to move all of her teaching online. Fast forward a bit, and no joke, that little digital sandbox ended up selling to LinkedIn for a staggering $1.5 billion. Wild, right?
And honestly, Linda is the absolute poster child for what London Business School professor John Mullins calls counter-conventional mindsets. It's a bit of a mouthful, but basically these are specific, highly effective mental inclinations that completely defy big company best practices. I mean, they literally fly in the face of everything traditional business schools teach you about strategy, marketing, and risk.
So, welcome to This Explainer. Today, our goal is super simple but incredibly powerful. We're breaking down the 6 rules you absolutely must break if you want to succeed as an entrepreneur. We're going to look at exactly how the greatest founders think differently, and more importantly, how you can apply their exact frameworks to your own career.
But before we jump into those actionable frameworks, let's just clarify exactly what we mean by a mindset. A mindset isn't just some fleeting, random thought. It's the mental inclination that predetermines how you respond when an opportunity comes your way. Think of it as your brain's default setting that dictates your very next move.
Okay, let's dive right into this. Phase 1. Building your offering. This is where the foundation gets laid. And honestly, it's where the very first major rule gets broken.
See, traditional B-school logic tells you to, quote, stick to your knitting. Big companies are constantly taught to focus only on their core competencies, which basically means that anything outside that narrow scope gets a firm no. But the entrepreneurial mindset completely flips this on its head. Great founders, they embrace the unknown with a resounding yes we can.
Let's look at how this actually plays out in the real world. So Arnold Correa built this massive business in Brazil called Atmo Digital simply by totally disregarding the word no. He actually started out in event management, but when a client asked if he could install satellite uplinks to broadcast training to 260 stores, Arnold just said, yes, we can. And get this, he knew absolutely nothing about satellites at the time. Later on, Walmart came knocking and asked if those same TVs could go on the sales floor to run ads. Again, yes, we can. Arnold literally reinvented his business 4 separate times simply by saying yes to customer requests that were way outside his expertise.
And that brings us right to the second mindset. Big companies, they tend to run on this product-first logic. They think innovation is, taking the blue speckles out of laundry detergent, making them green, and calling it a revolution. Or maybe just releasing 5 slightly different flavors of a diet soda. But real entrepreneurs, they operate on problem-first logic. They aren't obsessing over iterating products, they focus purely on solving real, painful issues.
Take Jonathan Thorne, for example. He recognized a massive, frankly terrifying problem in operating rooms. Surgical forceps were actually sticking to human tissue. I mean, imagine a surgeon getting frustrated because the tissue keeps clinging to the tool. Yikes. Thorne didn't just iterate on some existing product line. He solved the core problem by developing a totally new silver-nickel alloy. And then he pivoted to an even more critical market, neurosurgeons. These are doctors who absolutely cannot afford to have forceps stick to healthy brain cells while they're removing a tumor. He focused on the problem, solved it, and eventually sold his incredibly successful company to Stryker. All right, so now that we've built the offering, we transition to phase 2, finding your target market. Basically, how do you actually find the people who will buy your solution? Well, big corporations almost always demand massive target markets because they have to move the needle on their giant revenue goals. They literally wouldn't bother with a small niche. But the counter-conventional mindset here is to think narrow, not broad. The greatest entrepreneurs start with an extremely narrow, hyper-focused niche that they can completely dominate.
A perfect example of this is Nike. Founders Phil Knight and Bill Bowerman didn't start out trying to sell shoes to everybody. No way. They focused exclusively on elite distance runners. At the time, shoes were really just made for sprinters running on smooth tracks. But distance runners, they were out there running on dirt roads, constantly suffering from sprained ankles and shin splints. So Nike obsessed over this tiny, specific target market. They created shoes with better lateral stability and more cushioning, just for them. It was only after they totally dominated this narrow niche that they expanded broadly to tennis and basketball.
Moving right along to phase 3, financing the venture. Now, what's really interesting about this next part is how we directly challenge the traditional corporate ways of funding a business.
So, traditional companies rely heavily on vast internal cash reserves. They often just hoard cash or use it for massive stock buybacks, like when Merck spent $18 billion on buybacks and dividends because they couldn't find enough R&D to fund. But for an entrepreneur, cash is the absolute lifeblood of the venture. So the counter-conventional mindset here is to ask for the cash and ride the float. In plain English, that means you collect the money before you deliver the product. You're getting your customers to actually fund your growth up front.
Elon Musk's master plan for Tesla is honestly the perfect case study here. Tesla's plan was pretty simple on paper. Build a fancy sports car, use that money to build a lower-priced car, and then use that money to build a mass-market car. The catch? They needed a whole lot of cash to start. So what did they do? They hosted a roadshow and sold 100 Tesla Roadsters for $100,000 each, and they asked for that cash up front, before a single car was even built. Just like that, they put $10 million in the bank to fund operations. And they repeated this exact same mindset later with the Model 3, collecting $1,000 deposits from nearly 500,000 consumers. That generated a staggering $500 million in cash to fund all their engineering, tooling, and factories, entirely without taking on traditional debt. It's genius.
The next financing mindset totally flips traditional asset management on its head. The standard B-School finance model demands deep, complex analysis to calculate the return on investment before purchasing any heavy assets. But the entrepreneurial hack is completely different. Beg, borrow, but please don't steal. I mean, why buy expensive assets when you can just borrow exactly what you need?
Tristram and Rebecca Mayhew captured this approach perfectly. They wanted to build this massive treetop adventure business called Go Ape over in the UK. But as you can imagine, buying vast forests of mature trees would require immense capital. So they didn't buy a single piece of land. Instead, they partnered with the UK Forestry Commission, who were already looking for more visitors. Go Ape essentially borrowed the trees, the parking lots, and the facilities. They only had to pay to install their own ropes and equipment. They managed to scale to over 30 sites just by borrowing the heaviest assets they needed.
And that brings us to phase 4, breaking the rules. This is our final and, frankly, perhaps the most disruptive phase of the whole entrepreneurial journey.
Look, in a big company, if you want to try something highly innovative, you usually have to pass it through the legal department first. And it is very easy for a corporate lawyer to just say no to avoid any regulatory trouble, which instantly kills innovation. But the startup ethos, it's the exact opposite. Entrepreneurs don't ask for permission. They just get on with it. They intentionally move faster than the regulations can keep up.
Just consider the launch of Uber. If the founders had gone to San Francisco city regulators and explicitly asked for permission to launch a taxi company that didn't actually own any taxis, they would have been instantly rejected, just to protect the existing industry. Instead, from a purely strategic perspective, the founders just got on with it. They launched the technology, put it out there, and let the regulations catch up to the new reality of the market. Now, of course, ethical and legal boundaries are super important, but as a strategic mindset, they simply refuse to wait for a green light.
So as we wrap up this explainer, I want to turn this directly over to you. I want you to honestly reflect on your own journey for a second. Which of these 6 mindsets do you feel like you already naturally embody? Which of the others could you actively start practicing? Could you maybe teach these frameworks to your colleagues to elevate your whole team? And finally, is there a specific roadblock you're facing right now where one of these mindsets might just be the key to solving it?
Big company best practices are really just designed to maintain the status quo. But entrepreneurs, we're here to build the future. By thinking narrowly, focusing on problems instead of products, leveraging customer cash up front, and refusing to wait around for permission, you can completely bypass those corporate roadblocks. So I'll leave you with this one final provocative thought. What conventional B-School rule are you going to break today to change the world?